You're traveling through another podcast. A podcast not only of reviewing and discussing, but of discovery. A journey into a wondrous show whose boundaries are that of imagination. That's the RSS feed up ahead. Your next stop, Anthology.
Hello and welcome to Anthology, presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. I'm your host, Matt Hurt, and if this is your first time listening, Anthology is one man's examination of the Twilight Zone as a first-time viewer. Each podcast, I review one episode of Rod Serling's iconic series and round out the show with a bonus review of a movie or show related to the week's main topic. I also cover modern anthology science fiction shows like Black Mirror, Dimension 404, and Philip K. Dick's Electric Dreams in bonus episode review series. You can find more of Anthology as well as a full episode archive at anthologypod.com. And if you want to contact me, you can use the Facebook page at facebook.com/anthologypod, tweet me at OVAnthologypod, or send an email to matt@obsessiveviewer.com. So today on the podcast, I will be discussing the 12th episode of the Twilight Zone second season, Dust. It originally aired on January 6th, 1961, and for this week's bonus review, I'll share my thoughts on A Town Has Turned to Dust, an episode of Playhouse 90 written by Rod Serling. But before I do that, I do have a couple of news items to hit before we go into the actual review. First of all, Happy New Year, guys. This is my first official main episode of Anthology in 2018. I previously, this week, released my first bonus review of Black Mirror Season 4, so you can find that on the feed. But this is the first main episode of Anthology, and I'm super excited for 2018. And to kind of to commemorate that, I just want to announce that listener Joseph in New York, he won the contest for the Anthology shirt. So thank you, Joseph, for the very kind iTunes review, and I'll get your shirt mailed out this weekend, or ordered this weekend, and it'll probably be in like 2 weeks that it'll get to you. But yeah, so it'll be on its way. I'll probably also throw in some like stickers or something, so you'll probably get that first. And then the shirt will follow soon after. So thank you again for entering, and everyone who took the time to enter. And yeah, I'll be doing more things like that throughout 2018, I'm sure. But I'm excited. And Joseph, when you get your shirt, if you want to send me a picture of it, that would be awesome. If not, don't worry about it. And then the other piece of news I want to hit on real quick is just that over at Obsessive Viewer, my kind of flagship podcast over at ObsessiveViewer.com, we released our year in review episode where me and my co-hosts go through our top 10 list of the year for movies that we watched, and it's always a blast. I just wanted to kind of throw that out there to go check that out at Obsessive Viewer, and check that out if you're into that kind of stuff. And then finally, since it's the new year, I kind of want to go over some quick podcast stats that is probably of interest to no one, but I just wanted to just throw it out there that Obsessive Viewer podcasts, like ObsessiveViewer.com/podcasts, has 3 different podcasts. We have Obsessive Viewer, this show, and then Tower Junkies, the newer podcast about Stephen King and the Dark Tower. So I just wanted to throw out there that over the course of 2017, I produced and released 70 episodes of podcasts across all 3 shows altogether, which totaled out to 4 days and 22 hours worth of audio content. And then more specifically for Anthology, I released a total of 22 episodes, 13 of which being main episodes where I review an episode of The Twilight Zone and end it with a bonus review of a movie or show related to the week's main episode. That was 13 episodes, and that accounted for 66.5% of all of the Anthology episodes I released in 2017. And then I released 8 bonus episodes. So for Dimension 404 and, well, at that point it was just Dimension 404. Actually, no, I think I had 2 Black Mirror episodes also. Anyway, 8 bonus episodes, 28.1% of all Anthology episodes in 2017. And then finally I had 1 special episode. That was my panel at Indiana Comic Con. That was accounted for 5.4% of Anthology episodes. So anyway, all told, I released 20 hours and 58 minutes of audio content on Anthology in Anthology accounted for 17.6% of my overall podcasting in 2017. And that is a number that I'm really going to hope to increase in 2018. I'm going to make an effort to really not take as many impromptu hiatuses and try to be as consistent as I possibly can with Anthology, because I know that I do take those. Sometimes it gets a little hard to keep up with it, and so I do appreciate everyone, putting up with me over the last year and enjoying the podcast for another year. And I'm looking forward to doing this for a long, long time, given the amount of stuff that I have to review. So that is news for this week. I'm going to dive into my review of Dust, but of course, as I normally will do, I will go ahead and read the plot summary, courtesy of Unlocking the Door to a Television Classic by Martin Grahams Jr. And of course, I'm going to be spoiling every plot element of Dust in this episode going forward. So if you haven't seen Dust yet, go back and check it out, and then come back and listen to the episode. So, the plot summary for Dust is as follows. In a dry, dusty southwestern village, Luis Gallegos, a Mexican villager, got drunk one night and accidentally killed a little girl with his wagon. Having been tried and found guilty, he is sentenced to hang this afternoon. In a town where everyone is sick to the stomach, a public execution is the last thing the sheriff wants to perform, but makes the necessary preparations. Sykes, a traveling peddler and boisterous, scheming notion of evil, sells the rope that will be used to hang the young man. Sykes then offers false hope to the condemned man by selling the boy's father some magic dust that will supposedly make hate turn into love. Then the naive father believes the peddler and buys the bag for 100 pesos. Moments before Gallegos is to be hanged, his father shouts about, throwing dust on everyone, pleading for love. Sykes, in the background, enjoys the laughs. The ceremony goes on, however, and the trap is sprung. Through the hand of Providence, the rope breaks and the boy's life is saved. Some people in the crowd shout for a rehanging, but the parents of the dead girl, seeing the desperation of the father, agree that the boy has been punished enough. The lad is released and everyone goes back home. Sykes, realizing that the rope could not have possibly broken because of Gallegos' weight, suspects divine intervention may have had a hand. So, this episode stars Thomas Gomez as Peter Sykes. This is his second of 2 Twilight Zone episodes. He previously appeared in Escape Clause, and he also appeared in an episode of Medallion Theater, written by Rod Serling in 1953, that was titled They Call Them the Meek. I couldn't find like a plot description or anything of that, or anything about what it was about, but yeah, that was something that he collaborated with Serling on. And another thing that he had in his IMDb was an episode of Center Stage that was also written by Serling in 1954, titled The Worthy Opponent. And he wasn't in any other science fiction anthology shows, but he was in Beneath the Planet of the Apes, which kind of has a tangential relationship to Serling, of course, and Serling had a hand in writing the original Planet of the Apes. And I believe Beneath the Planet of the Apes was the second one in the franchise. I'm like 99% sure of that. Co-starring in this episode as Sheriff Koch is John Larch. This is his second of 3 Twilight Zones. He was previously in Perchance to Dream, and the next and final appearance he'll make is in Season 3's It's a Good Life. He has tons of acting credits, but no other science fiction anthology shows that I could find in it. But he was in 2 episodes of a sci-fi series in the early 50s called Space Patrol. It sounded kind of silly and kind of weird. It kind of seemed like a campy type of early science fiction show. I couldn't find any more information about it. And then also co-starring as Gallegos' father is Vladimir Sokolov. This is his first of 3 episodes of The Twilight Zone, and he'll finish up his run with the series in season 3 in the episodes The Mirror and The Gift. And he also made an appearance in The Magnificent Seven, obviously the original, of course. And then also it's kind of interesting to note that he actually passed away just a little bit over a year after this episode aired, which is surprising because, I mean, I don't know where The Mirror and The Gift fall in the list of episodes or in the production or airing schedule of the episodes, but he is, that must have been pretty early if he passed away, so recently, after this episode aired, or so soon after this episode aired. And then rounding out the cast is John Alonzo as Luis Gallegos. This is his only episode of The Twilight Zone, and he also appeared in The Magnificent Seven. As far as acting credits are concerned, he nothing really stood out or anything, but he was a very accomplished cinematographer. His DP credits on IMDb include some very, very big movies. He was the cinematographer on Chinatown, Vanishing Point, Brian De Palma's Scarface, Steel Magnolias, Star Trek Generations, and also the 2000 TV movie remake of Failsafe, which Failsafe is the original Failsafe, is a movie that I'll have to review it as a bonus episode. I know I've said that on the podcast before, but I just don't know what episode of the Twilight Zone to pair it with. So if you're listening and you have any suggestions, because Failsafe is absolutely a movie that I want to check out and I want to incorporate into this podcast. So if there's a particular Cold War nuclear threat episode coming up in the Twilight Zone, let me know what it is, and I'll make sure I put a note to have Failsafe paired with it, because I definitely want to incorporate that. And writer for this episode was Rod Serling, and he had, this story has kind of an interesting past with Serling's credits and everything. So he had originally written a script for a radio play in 1950 that was titled The Dust by Any Other Name, which had a character that was trying to make a chemical that would produce a dust that would make mortal enemies forget their hatred for each other. And then he had tried to get that radio play produced, but it was actually rejected by Dr. Christian, the Dr. Christian radio program. So then down the road, around 1957, he had written a script called Aftermath for Playhouse 90, or I don't know if he necessarily wrote it for Playhouse 90, but the script was titled Aftermath and was rejected by sponsors because they were afraid that it was too controversial. That iteration of the story had a focal point of Southern segregation of the time. So it being a contemporary issue, I assume scared the sponsors into not producing it. So Serling went and he rewrote the script, and he rewrote it to focus on a Mexican in the 19th century, essentially. So that eventually got produced for Playhouse 90 in 1958, and then here in 1961, I guess technically the production dates were September of 1960. He reworked it again, and it was actually July of 1960s when he rewrote it and shortened it and made some alterations to make it more Twilight Zone-y. And that's where we got Dust, simply titled Dust. And so that was kind of the very quick history of Dust. And there's some more interesting tidbits about A Town Has Turned to Dust, but I'll talk about that in my bonus review. But So that was kind of the history of that. Director for this episode was Douglas Hayes. This is his 8th of 9 Twilight Zone episodes. His next and final episode will be The Invaders, which I believe is later this season, in a few weeks probably. So yeah, and also kind of a interesting piece of trivia that I should probably say for trivia, but I'll throw it in here because it's related to Douglas Hayes. His son, Doug Hayes Jr., I believe that was his name, appears in the show, in the episode. Yeah, Doug Hayes Jr., as one of the farm boys, or one of the farmer boys in the episode. And the reason that Doug Hayes Jr. was in the role is because, his other brother, took ill and was supposed to be in the show, but, became ill. So Doug Hayes Jr., took over for him. So what I knew before going into Dust was that it was a Western themed episode, and that that's basically it. I had caught a glimpse of the Netflix description, and I saw that it had the word tragic in it, and that's about all that I knew about it. And to kind of further clarify, the actual description on Netflix is: in a tragic Western town, a desperate father begs for clemency as his son is slated to die for an accident he could not have prevented. So that's the description. So I saw the word tragic and thought, oh, it's something about tragedy and a Western setting. So, yeah. Okay, so going into this episode, let's see. So I'll just dive into my thoughts on it. So, the first thing I noticed is that the immediate narration by Serling was just a little bit jarring to me, just because we've gone so long, so many episodes, it seems, recently have had a nice little, like, kind of cold open before the opening narration, and this just kind of dives right into it, and Serling kind of it almost kind of takes a tone of, like, kind of waxing nostalgic that he's talking about. There was a village and that had a virus that was shared by its people, and he referred to it as a germ of squalor. So maybe not waxing nostalgic, but he was just kind of has that signature Serling kind of colorful wording for it. But it definitely paints a vivid picture of this town that's kind of dying, and how its people are kind of on the edge of destroying themselves. The ending of the opening monologue says that they begin to destroy themselves. And that, like, little blurb reminded me a bit of The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. So I kind of thought that maybe it would have something to do with, like, a mob mentality kind of thing, which is interesting because the previous iteration of the story, A Town Is Turned to Dust, definitely had that at the focal point of it. And so we get introduced pretty immediately to Sykes, and he's actually our kind of our initial. He's the first person we're introduced to, and it's immediately known, like, he's a very jolly guy. He's kind of the snake oil salesman. He's very prosperous, it's immediately shown to us that he is definitely prospering over the despair of the town. So it definitely paints him in a very negative light, in a very adversarial light for the episode. And then not long after that, we're introduced to Luis, who, it's interesting because the way that we're introduced to him and the way that we're introduced to his backstory and the fact that he basically ran over a child and killed her while he was drunk and driving his wagon. The way that we're introduced to that is purely through Sykes' dialogue, and he is just kind of taunting at Luis, and it's really kind of hammering home the fact that the town is just filled with misery, and that kind of comes to not comes to a head, but kind of it's reinforced by the fact that the Sheriff Koch, is just completely what is the word I'm looking for? He's very downtrodden and just kind of tired of it, and he seems like he's just kind of checked out. So, right off the bat, we're introduced to kind of this dynamic with these three people, that this one guy is profiting off of everything. This one guy is very much about to die, and he is clearly, like, very remorseful and very just like it's a tragedy for him as well and his family. And then we get the sheriff who's just kind of not necessarily letting it happen, but he has a little bit of authority over it, but it's just he doesn't have that that drive to do it, because presumably he's just beaten down by the town and the germ of squalor, as Serling would put it. And what I immediately noticed was kind of let's see, so kind of a mixed bag with the character of Sykes, in that first I kind of thought like, okay, well, he is like, I really liked how he was how his character was portrayed. I really enjoyed, for the most part, I really did enjoy Thomas Gomez's performance in this episode, because he definitely has this levity to him that is completely misguided and completely terrible, because he is, for all intents and purposes, the kind of villain of the episode. But he has this glee and this kind of sense of like the energy that he has to it, the happiness that he feels by kind of berating Luis and really demonizing this incarcerated man who's about to die die that afternoon. The happiness that he feels by just completely crapping on him. It's a good, I don't know, the kind of energy of it is a good counterbalance to the overall bleak tone of the entire episode in the town, because even though he is, even though his excitement and his happiness is completely driven by the pain and despair of the town itself, just the energy that he brings to the portrayal and the happiness is somewhat infectious to the audience. Like he's fun to watch. But then it gets kind of like, it kind of hammers it over our heads a little bit. Like Sykes is almost obsessed with the fact that Luis is going to be hanged. And it's kind of, I don't know, it just didn't sit right with me. It was just like, okay, you're kind of beating a dead horse. Or nearly dead criminal, or, I don't even know if I'd say criminal. But yeah, it kind of just seemed a little bit too much, and too quick of a succession. Yeah, so then we get the kind of funeral procession, and like Sykes is still like, very much, kind of getting very much sickeningly gleeful at the funeral procession and everything. And then when he sees Louise's father and family there, he kind of has this energy to him, like I believe he said, "You ever seen so much gall in one place?" Just kind of commenting on the fact that they're there, which, I mean, that makes sense in kind of the, that kind of makes a little bit of sense in the overall scheme of things. Cause, I mean, that's a kind of healthy comment to make, because, I mean, yeah, they came to pay their respects and everything, and that's fine. But, I mean, you could kind of see you can kind of see why it would be controversial, of course, since they are the family of the man who's about to be hanged. Which I think it's funny that, you know, they're going to kill the guy or execute the guy the same day that they're having the funeral for the girl. I think that's just a little convenient, but I mean, that's not a complaint or anything. I just thought that it was interesting. But it expedites the story, of course. And I mean, there are just kind of a lot of layers to Gallegos' family being there at the funeral, and there's just, I don't know, there's just so many kind of layers to that, because I can definitely understand the family wanting to pay their respects and to offer their condolences to the family, kind of on behalf of Luis, even if not on behalf of Luis, then just for their own conscience, essentially, since there must be some kind of guilt by association, if you will, or this pain that it makes me think that the pain that the family of Luis is feeling must also be something that they have to reckon with as well. And I really like that it doesn't do them any favors. Like, we get Sykes making a comment about how they're there at the funeral procession, and then you have the father, or you have the family of the daughter, I believe it was the father, just saying, "Can't you see we're burying our daughter today?" And it's just like, you can kind of see both sides, that the Gallegoses, they want to pay their respects and maybe clear their conscience, but the family of the child they're just solely concentrated on, saying goodbye to their daughter. So that, like, little small moment in the episode it might have been my favorite, because, to be honest, I wasn't too crazy about this episode overall, but that little, like, what I could read into in that scene definitely kind of helped me with appreciating this episode a little bit more than I would have without it. And then we get the scene with Luis's father kind of defending him to the town, and what I liked about that is that he's defending Luis in a way that's he's trying to make them understand that he's a person too, and what he gets for it is someone throws a rock at him and they don't listen to him. So I liked that kind of not necessarily display of mob mentality, because it's not necessarily a mob mentality, but it's interesting that Luis's father can be viewed as a guilty party in it, to the extent where someone literally casts a stone at them, at him, like he is like he is being physically harmed because of something that his son did, in which the crime of Luis, like, I mean, he got drunk and accidentally ran over a little girl, which, I mean, I don't know what kind of drunk driving laws were enacted in the 19th century, but yeah, I mean, there is fault on Luis's part, but it's kind of the thesis statement of the episode is that it was an accident. It was something that that wasn't malicious, or there was no intent to do it. It was just a complete accident based on poor judgment. And as a result, Luis is losing his life and his family is losing him. And the town is all for it, because the town is kind of poisoned at this point. And so up until this point, it's been a very grounded episode. And at that point, it was very grounded, and I was struggling to keep my interest on it. Kind of the fact that it was grounded and there wasn't anything supernatural or Twilight Zone-y to it yet, that coupled with the fact that it was kind of a bland Western setting. Obviously at the time, Westerns were kind of all the craze because they were cheap to produce on television, and there isn't much to differentiate it. Like, it's very much a kind of, I want to steer away from the word cliche, but it's very much a kind of ordinary thing. There isn't anything that stands out as far as the setting or anything, and so that caused me to kind of struggle to hold my interest. And so we get some more interesting things with Luis's father talking to the sheriff about why his son drinks. That it's not like this. It's a compulsion that's bred out of a deep-seated sadness within him. That kind of versus Sykes' perspective of Luis's crime, like where he's completely demonizing him. That offered an interesting dynamic to the episode in terms of the kind of motivations of each character and the viewpoints of each character. But I don't know, with Luis being sad, a kind of sad drunk, it just felt kind of like we were just like we were just covering this last week with Henry Corwin in Night of the Meek. It kind of felt like it was just kind of doubling back on something that the show has already very recently depicted in, dare I say, even in a better and more well-rounded way. And so then we get the, not even necessarily, like we're still not to the Twilight Zone moment, because Sykes tells the girl that there's magic dust that he has that he'll sell them for 100 pesos that will make people's hate turn to love. And that kind of got me more interested, even though it hadn't introduced the Twilight Zone aspects of it. That's our first hint that, something is going to happen that's out of the ordinary. And that got me more interested, not only because of the promise that, obviously, since it's the Twilight Zone, clearly the dust is going to work, or there's going to be some kind of effect that's going to be Twilight Zone-y to it. But not only that, but just like that scene where he's manipulating this little girl out of 100 pesos and her grieving family out of 100 pesos, like that just really reinforced Sykes as just this snake-like character that's a really terrible character. And it kind of reminded me a little bit of Mr. Denton on Doomsday back in season 1. Kind of it has that episode and this one have a lot of similarities. They're both westerns. Denton is this very sad drunk person who has a compulsion to drink, and there's also this man who is selling an elixir or in Mr. Denton on Doomsday, it's a potion. In Dust, it's dust that is supposed to make something work in the person's favor. So there are some interesting parallels to be made there. And we get the kind of big hanging scene, or the preparation for it. And like I like the idea of them bringing kids to the hanging to teach a lesson. That seems just kind of barbaric a little bit. Yeah, so I like the idea of bringing kids to a hanging to teach a lesson, because it seemed, I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it kind of got a chuckle out of me. That's kind of a gruesome thing to make these kids watch, but I mean, the different time, I guess. But the kind of big tragedy of the episode, like the saddest thing about the episode though, happens when Luis's father brings Sykes the 100 pesos, and he explains that all of his friends pulled their money together to get the money for the dust. And like, that is just, man, that's so sad to me, because I can just like imagine this man that's at the end of his, no pun intended, at the end of his rope, going to like having his hand out to all of like his closest friends and begging them to chip in for this dust that, I mean, has like is clearly like very much not likely to save his son. And they did it. And just the fact that he got the money together, just, man, it's just so sad and sad to me, really. And Sykes, at this point, when he sells him the dust, isn't even hiding the fact that he's just the shady snake oil salesman. Like he remarks that he sells which is needed. He sells that which is needed, which that kind of reminds me of What You Need, obviously. Which, I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm kind of getting into a thing where, like, I'm comparing this episode to other episodes strictly because I don't really have much to say about this episode because I wasn't that interested in it. So those comparisons are just kind of I'm making comparisons to what are stronger episodes in the Twilight Zone, because this one just kind of didn't seem to really work for me. I did like the scene where Luis's father is kind of throwing the dust at all the people, and he's pleading for them to like his line is, "You must pay heed to the magic," and I kind of like that. And the episode builds a respectable amount of suspense as we're getting prepared for Luis to be hanged, and we get the kind of build up to the actual hanging. Like, obviously, I mean, for me at least, it was obvious that something is going to happen that is not expected with this hanging. Although, man, it would have been kind of incredible if this episode was kind of, well, I don't know if incredible is the right word, but I would have been interested to see this episode be just a completely straightforward thing, that Luis does get executed and the dust doesn't work. But I don't know how that would have worked in the greater Twilight Zone canon, I guess. But in the lead up to the actual hanging, when he is about to be hanged, it's actually suspenseful, because, like I said, it's very much expected that something out of the ordinary is going to happen when they hang him, just because the conceit of the Twilight Zone is that things happen that are out of the ordinary, and nothing particularly out of the ordinary has happened yet in this episode. But still, the way that it's shot and the way that the way that it's kind of drawn out, really is kind of a unique and respectable way to depict it, because you're kind of like, as much as I wasn't that invested in this episode mentally, I was still kind of feeling that kind of giddiness, that kind of edge of your seatness when you're not sure what the outcome's going to be. So I definitely respect the episode for that, because it kind of worked. It worked in kind of an uphill fashion to get me to be invested in it in the kind of big moment. And so, of course, the rope breaks, and I thought that was interesting. The whole way that scene played out, like the sheriff gets his moment to, kind of just, I guess the town itself gets a moment to reflect on what they need to do, or whether or not they would hang him again, and how they kind of figure out that they're not going to hang him, that he's suffered enough and everything. And just there was just this gloom and dourness that's all over the townspeople in that moment that I appreciated. And then the episode kind of just ends with Sykes taking the money and just giving it to the kids. And that kind of stood out to me as in a kind of a negative way, because he says the line, "That's what she is, magic." And I took that to mean that he's just, he's accepting that, oh wow, that dust was magic. Like, there was something otherworldly or divine that stepped in for it. And I get that. Like, I kind of appreciate that, because it's not a full redemption for him. But the fact that he gives the kids the money, I'm not sure if he really earned that much of it. Like, he's still like this sniveling, like, snake oil salesman. You would think that he would still keep the money. Like, I don't know if it's not like he had a complete change of heart, or at least it didn't feel like to me that he had a complete change of heart to the point where he would just give away the money that he just took from a grieving and desperate man. But maybe that's my own hang up with it. I just think that maybe part of it is because the actual supernatural elements of the episode kind of appeared so late in the episode, and they really hammered home Sykes' kind of very morally his broken moral compass throughout the episode. So I just don't feel like there was enough of a turn for him to really turn around and become a better person by the end of the episode. So overall, I mean, this was kind of a middle of the road episode for me, maybe even a little bit less. It was somewhat a little bit below average for me. Like, there's nothing in the episode that's particularly bad or damaging to it. Like, it's a very well put together episode, and like everything tracks pretty well except for Sykes' redemption at the end. But at the same time, while I don't have much to really speak negatively about it, nothing about it really stands out that much. And the things that do stand out are the things that remind me of frankly better episodes of the Twilight Zone that I've seen, and things that I am kind of putting more into, like I'm reading more into than maybe reading more into what's there, or I'm expanding on what's there because it's not in there enough. Like Luis's father getting the money together, and the kind of dichotomy between like why Luis drinks and the town and everyone's viewpoint of him. Like these are things that are touched on, but none of it seems like a big focus of the episode. Like it's not like a big sprawling thing throughout the entire episode. It's just a collection of very little interactions and dynamics at play. And I think the episode kind of suffers for that, but again, there's nothing outwardly bad about the episode. It's just kind of a slightly below average episode for me. And so, as far as trivia, I don't really have much, except for, well, really the only thing that I have is what I've already said. Douglas Hayes' son appeared as one of the farm boys, and the basic information about the genesis of the idea and where it came from, and its history of, like, writing history and everything. So, overall, like I said, it was just a kind of below average episode, but I guess that'll do it for my review of the episode. And of course, before we move on to this week's bonus review, I'm going to play a short clip from an episode of Tower Junkies, a podcast where me and my co-host Tiny talk about Stephen King and the Dark Tower series. So enjoy this clip. It seems like since Jake is a child, it's kind of a more nurturing kind of thing. Like these are his role models and his family, and viewing the quartet through the eyes of Jake is a little stronger than through the eyes of other characters in the quartet, just because he is this child that's still kind of growing. Mm-hmm. Of course, you can find Tower Junkies on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and at towerjunkiespod.com. And you can find more of my podcasting and everything at obsessiveviewer.com/podcasts. So my bonus review for this week is A Town Has Turned to Dust, which is a 1958 Playhouse 90 episode written by Rod Serling, starring Rod Steiger and William Shatner, and directed by John Frankenheimer. And let's see. And it's some kind of a little bit of notes about this episode in particular. Like, first of all, it is available in its entirety on YouTube. The audio is not great. There are moments where it kind of cuts out a little bit here and there, so it was a little difficult to watch, but it is available in its entirety on YouTube. And Serling said that his original teleplay, apparently it was changed drastically by censors, and he was furious with the finished product. He was quoted as saying, "They chopped it up like a room full of butchers at work on a steer." And then this was kind of interesting to me. The episode was remade as a made-for-TV movie with Stephen Lang and Ron Perlman about 40 years after the episode aired, so in the 90s. Where they set the story in post-apocalyptic 2215, and I believe it was on Sci-Fi, which at the time would have been actual Sci-Fi channel, not SYFY. But anyway, so first off, I really like the opening music of Playhouse 90. I've reviewed a couple episodes of Playhouse 90 for this podcast, and just like there's something about the music that plays at the beginning of Playhouse 90 that I really enjoy. So the episode, or the story, kind of begins with these people, kind of the sheriff and the police kind of waiting for this lynch mob to come and take this take this prisoner to hang him. And it's remarked in the episode that hanging is a faster brand of justice than God intended, which I thought was kind of beautifully stated. Definitely an interesting kind of thing to bring us into the episode, or bring us into the story. And so they're kind of waiting for the lynch mob, and I thought that it was interesting that as much as that quote that I read from Serling about them, kind of tearing it apart and the censors kind of tearing it apart, just the fact that in 1958 they were showing, and granted this was kind of transposed to the 19th century story and kind of the racism involved was toward Mexicans, but in 1958 showing lynchings on TV, it must have resonated a lot with the time and the kind of the racial controversy of the time, of course. And so basically I'll give away a little bit of the plot element for it, because it's kind of the opening is them taking, this lynch mob coming to the sheriff's, to the jail and physically taking the man and hanging him, outside. It's an actual lynching. They're not it's not an execution. It's a lynch mob that comes and takes him. And what I loved about that, the end of the first act is the lynching, and then it ends with the sheriff kind of lamenting that they never heard the guy's story. The mob was so wrapped up in the fervor of it and the mob mentality of it that no one ever even got the man's side of the story. And so the story was that Jerry Paul, played by William Shatner, he owns a general store, and that he claimed that the guy had tried to rob the store and beat his wife. And there's a little bit more to it than that comes into play in a little bit later in the episode. But I'll save that for if you want to check it out. But I just kind of like this kind of tender display of how the sheriff is he's very downtrodden and very morose over it, and they're saying that we didn't know he was guilty, we just strung him up to satisfy the mood. And what I love about this episode, or what I enjoyed about this story and this depiction, was that William Shatner is really good in it. He plays this very, very racist and kind of this very casual racist who he is the villain of the episode, but there's such a casual nature to him that it just seems like it's just kind of set in his way, and it's very much indicative of this is he just speaks casually about how Mexican people are lesser than him because they're Mexican and he's white, and it's just rough to watch. His casual racism throughout the episode is very unnerving to me. And then it's revealed later in the episode that there was a very brutal lynching about 16 years before this episode. And it's just really that comes into play later in the episode, but it really kind of ties the story together about this town and the mob mentality and the kind of overt racism of the town. And it's a really interesting depiction, because after the lynching takes place and everything, there's this party scene in the bar, and they're everyone is celebrating, and it's just a very disturbing thing to see. Yeah, and then throughout the episode, I'm trying to dance around spoilers, but throughout the episode, the sheriff, played by Rod Serling, and William Shatner, they kind of go up against each other. Rod Serling kind of represents the humanity of the town, or what's left. He's the last notion of humanity in the town, and William Shatner is this kind of devil person who is leading the town into this destructive force and destructive thing. And it's just the way that the cataclysm of them coming together and them kind of not literally duking it out, but the way that their ideals are represented in contrast to each other. It's they have really strong scenes together where they're both kind of going back and forth, and neither one is unwielding. They're not necessarily unwielding to it. They're very much set in their ideals. And the way that the episode kind of goes through, this will have to be a brief review, because I can't really talk more about it without spoiling it, but the way the episode concludes is very satisfying to me as a statement on racism and everything like that. And William Shatner and Rod Steiger were really great in it. Like I said, this episode was available in its entirety on YouTube with some slight sound issues, but honestly, that's the only way that I could find it. I couldn't even find it like on Google Play or anything. Which again, man, I really wish that, I think that there's a DVD collection of old Playhouse 90 episodes collected in a DVD set, but I don't know how much it is or if it's still in print, but man, I wish that, stories like this and like old live television like that would be, remastered and released for, us to watch and enjoy. It would make my job a lot easier. I'll say that. So anyway, that's a kind of brief review, and this might be actually kind of a brief episode overall. I haven't checked the time. I guess not necessarily that brief, pretty much on point. But, yeah, so that'll do it for this episode of Anthology. I am currently doing my bonus review series for Black Mirror Season 4. You can check that out on the feed. And then, after that, I'm going to do 2 episodes in between each main episode of Anthology. So I'm going to get through that really quick. And then right after that, I'm going to dive right into my Philip K. Dick's Electric Dreams bonus review series. So we're going to have a lot of stuff coming out here in the next month or so. So next, and if you like what you've heard and you want to help support the show, obviously you can leave a rating and review on iTunes. It only takes a couple minutes. You can just type in a sentence or what have you, and then and rate it hopefully 5 stars. And that increases visibility for the podcast on iTunes, which is the preeminent, it's the biggest search engine and everything for podcasts. So, and if you're feeling particularly generous, you can of course also donate to the podcast through PayPal by clicking the donate button on anthologypod.com, or you can become a patron at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer, where you can, if you pay minimum of $1, you will get my undying gratitude and access to a special RSS feed that has bonus or a Patreon exclusive commentary tracks for movies. I currently only have Jingle All the Way up for Christmas, but I'll be recording another commentary track probably this weekend for that feed. And so again, you can find that at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. And next time on the podcast, I am going to be reviewing Back There, which is episode 13 of season 2 of the Twilight Zone. And for my bonus review, I will be reviewing 1960s adaptation of H.G. Wells's The Time Machine. And then the week after that will be this month's Patreon selected bonus review. Patreon subscriber Robert is once again backing me for this month, and in talking to him, he has selected the science fiction movie Mr. Nobody from, I believe it's 2009. It's available on Netflix, so watch for that in the next couple of weeks. And yeah, once again, check out my bonus reviews of Black Mirror. Season 4 is pretty good. There's some really good stuff in season 4, and I'm really excited to review it. So without further ado, thank you guys so much for listening, and thank you once again for another year of podcasting somewhat regularly on this podcast. I promise I'm going to be releasing, my goal is to release more consistently in 2018 and much more than just 22 episodes. So I'm so glad that you guys are sticking with me for another year, and I'm looking forward to doing a better job this year. So thank you once again for listening, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to Anthology, presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. For more of Anthology and a full archive of my episodes, go to anthologypod.com. And if you want to help support the show, the easiest way you can do that is by leaving a rating and a review on iTunes. You can also make donations to the show courtesy of the donate link in the show notes of each episode and on anthologypod.com. For recurring donations, you can become a patron at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer and just choose one of the Anthology reward tiers. If you enjoy Anthology, feel free to check out The Obsessive Viewer, a weekly movie and TV podcast I host with my friend Tiny and occasional guest co-hosts over at obsessiveviewer.com. You can also join the Obsessive Viewer Facebook group at facebook.com/theobsessiveviewer. For book reviews and commentary on the world of reading, check out our sister site at obsessivebooknerd.com. And for philosophical discussions from a secular viewpoint, check out my friends Chad and Amanda at thesecularperspective.com. Finally, if you'd like to contact me with your thoughts on the show, my reviews, my bonus reviews, or for any other reason, you can tweet me at obsessiveviewer, send me an email at matt@obsessiveviewer.com, or send me a message on Facebook and like the Facebook page at facebook.com/anthologypod. Once again, thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.